Hello, and thank you so much for joining us on today's Sibylline Inside podcast. I'm here with my colleague Denise Shapani, and today we'll be discussing AI and the evolution of it, utilizing it in cyber operations. Thank you so much for being here today, Denise. Really appreciate you taking the time. Recently, you produced a situation update brief on the use of AI in cyber operations. I was just wondering if you could kind of give, the audience a brief synopsis of what was discussed in it, and then we can kind of kick off from there.
Yeah, of course. Would love to. So we definitely identified three trends throughout the report, or at least three main trends when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence in cyber attacks, and sort of trying to focus on what's happened since the beginning of the year. So the very first thing that I would say we identified is how the sort of prominence and the importance of artificial intelligence and kind of the role that it's playing in the global economy, and the competition it drives among sort of artificial intelligence companies has also been reflected in the increased adoption of this technology by cyber criminals in particular, but generally cyber threat actors. We've also looked at how artificial intelligence and kind of the increased adoption of the technology in malicious activity is likely to enhance the sort of efficiency and sophistication as well as scalability of cyber operations. And lastly, kind of last broader trend is how it is likely to also amplify the impact of cyber operations, and specifically looking at social engineering attacks and influence operations.
That's really, really interesting. Thank you so much for going over kind of the brief overview. So kind of touching on maybe on that last point that you just mentioned, like the adoption of cyber threat actors utilizing it in operations. What have we been seeing then recently? Like what was kind of discussed in the report and that we've seen since the report's been published, that threat actors utilizing AI, how are they utilizing this? What could then businesses do to try to mitigate this?
So just to kind of look at something a bit more recent, since it's been sort of a couple of months since the report, there was a more recent sort of report by a cybersecurity company which really highlighted how more broadly cyber criminals are increasingly adopting artificial intelligence to really compensate for skill deficiencies, improve social engineering techniques, and also write malicious code. And this was also true when we really just wrote the report at the time. So, for example, it's been used widely to enhance social engineering attacks by both sort of state-sponsored actors and cyber criminals. We've looked at, for example, the adoption of AI, and specifically the platform Gemini, by state-sponsored actors, and specifically those affiliated with China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea. And they've adopted it for a wide range of activities, for example, editing, translation, text generation, reconnaissance, and also research. And this is predominantly Iranian and Chinese state-sponsored actors. Whilst looking at North Korean state-sponsored actors, we've seen also the adoption of AI to write malicious code, and then we've seen it used by cyber criminals as well, specifically with the use of, for example, deep fakes to make phishing phone calls or send phishing emails and really just impersonate for example, higher ups within a company, and then request really, really large amounts of money. For example, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will remember what happened last February, where threat actors used deep fakes to impersonate the CFO of a company that was based in Hong Kong. And this resulted in the transfer of $25 million, actually. So like a substantial figure, really just highlighting kind of the really big impacts that these kind of deepfakes can have with social engineering. But that's only part of the picture. It's being used in influence operations as well. When we look at deepfakes, for example, to just really enhance that content and also modify content online, which can have, again, really, really kind of big consequences. So one instance, for example, is the recent kind of elections in Romania last November, where the first round results were sort of annulled, citing kind of concerns of election interference, specifically using AI to manipulate online content. And those are kind of like some of the main examples when it comes, for example, to social engineering, just really highlighting the sophistication of the tool as well as the kind of big impacts that it can have.
It's becoming a lot more effective to fool people with phishing, when the incident with the Hong Kong employee, like there was a video call. So they were having a supposedly live conversation. So the fact that they're becoming a lot more convincing and realistic, same with the deep fakes and with utilizing, social engineering and AI for influence operations and just, constantly spamming things on social media. It's quite broad now, and quite ubiquitous just globally. Like its use in, just normal company operations, but also now in cyber operations, it's extremely common. Now threat actors can utilize it that aren't even just the sophisticated threat actors like we just mentioned with like state-sponsored and organized cyber criminals that are, been doing this for years. It's quite accessible now, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned Gemini, which is a legitimate application. It's a legitimate tool. So there is also this misuse and abuse of, normal AI technology and software and tools that aren't built for malicious operations, but they're being exploited in malicious ways. And like you've mentioned the expansion as well of like with the dark web, like a lot more people can access it. So how are we seeing kind of the wider range of threat actors utilizing this, posing more risks, especially like security and like data theft risks to companies? Like what's kind of been observed with that?
Yeah, so one of the very big trends is definitely how quickly it is expanding within the dark web, as you've mentioned. So sort of looking, for example, what I was saying earlier, we've looked at developments from the beginning of the year, and what we've really seen is how big events related to AI and AI innovations have direct consequences for trade of deepfake related tools and other types of AI related tools in the dark web. So, for instance, when we look at January, for example, and the document leak regarding the AI platform DeepSeek, that caused a major uproar and market crashes in the kind of days after, which had very real consequences in terms of cybercriminal exploitation in the kind of 2 months after, I would say, so February and March. So we saw, for example, cyber criminals really just incorporating DeepSeek into a business model that sells access to kind of high-profile large language models platforms, and also later on in March, other kind of cyber criminal groups advertising fake AI installers for the platform to then infiltrate targeted organizations and also deploy malware for a range of objectives, like, for example, stealing credentials and also mining cryptocurrencies. So again, financial and security risks, as well as sort of right after advertising actual AI sort of enabled cybercriminal platforms, which then lead to attack automation. And this is all kind of the ripple effects of one specific sort of global event that was related to DeepSeek. And also we watched this happen in terms of how the sort of document leak led to many of DeepSeek's competitors as well, like increase the distribution of newer AI platforms and newer AI models. And that was directly kind of related to then the cybercriminal ecosystem really thriving with new types of platforms, new types of attacks, and really integrating those legitimate platforms as well into business models and exploiting those platforms for kind of revenue. So again, seeing how what's happening with AI and the importance that it has in the global economy just has direct kind of consequences with regards to cybercriminal exploitation.
Thank you so much. I think with that, yeah, you mentioned the leak basically resulted in competitors kind of having then this insider knowledge, quote unquote, that, became public, that then kind of led to increased competition. So not only does it have security risks when it comes from cyber criminals and, potentially hacktivists and, state-sponsored actors, it's also like paves the way for kind of corporate espionage, because it wasn't necessarily the intent of the leak, but because then that was made public, these companies, other companies that also, deal in AI development can see what DeepSeek was doing and then can use that to form their own business decisions. So it definitely, I think, highlights like it's not just the malicious like cyber crimes, state-sponsored cyber espionage, disruption sort of risks. It's also highlighting like the reputational and corporate espionage risks that kind of also come from the misuse of AI, and just also like the increased in targeting technology companies that are developing AI. And I don't know if you've like touched upon that really yet, but have we seen kind of the increase in attacking technology companies that are developing AI and utilizing it? Or are we just saying that that's kind of the wider trend is using AI to conduct a variety of operations, and it's a bit not necessarily like a bit more just indiscriminate, that like, there maybe isn't a specific trend towards one sector per se. Have you kind of noticed any specific trends relating to that at all?
I would say from the reports that we've seen, it's more focused on how AI is really just being exploited to conduct more so, I would say, financially motivated operations, as well as really just enhancing like social engineering attacks, as we were saying, or influence operations for more state-sponsored objectives. What I would say to that as well is we've definitely seen over the last, I would say, year, increased targeting of technology companies, specifically with regards to, for example, really sort of pivotal technologies like, for example, semiconductors, and really increased intellectual property theft from those companies, as well as espionage, as you were saying. So whilst we haven't necessarily seen the report, so there hasn't been a kind of focus on that, I would say that it definitely, in a way, will like increase scrutiny and attempts to target those companies, because, again, as mentioned earlier, it obviously drives competition between companies as well. And we're looking at, in this case, a Chinese company versus US companies, and how that really just stirred up the market. So again, that's definitely a likely option, I would say, in the future, even though we haven't necessarily seen that too much up until now.
Interesting. No, thank you so much. That's like fascinating, and also good to know that, like, just because we aren't seeing it at the moment, doesn't mean it isn't happening. A lot of times with cyber reporting, it is often retrospective. So like, and the fact that it's an attractive target like market for actors, even just to utilize it, does kind of create the increased possibility of risk there, I guess. So based off of everything that you've talked about, what we have seen already in the last year, where do you see what's your forecast, and where do you see this trend kind of evolving into, let's say like 6 months to a year? Like, how do you think this will develop, and what do you think we'll see kind of looking forward?
Yeah, so with regards to that, I think it's important to focus on two things which we did explore in the report as well. One, I think, is the sort of deepfakes tool, and how rapidly those technologies are developing, and also how many reports we've seen over the last 12 months of just how big an impact these tools can have. But one thing that I think is important to mention is that a recent report highlighted how deepfakes can now sort of also replicate subtle skin color variations, which is something that cannot necessarily be detected by even the more kind of advanced technologies that prevent that kind of protects, against deepfakes. And this really shows how rapidly they are developing in a way that can really outpace the development as well of security protections. And so I think with regards to that and everything that we've spoken about so far, for social engineering, for example, and influence operations, I think that varying threat actors, so like state-sponsored cyber criminals, will likely seek to kind of increasingly adopt these technologies and exploit these technologies in attacks, because they are so effective, and also because, as we were saying, they're not as expensive or sort of difficult to obtain as they used to be. We have, for example, open source deepfake tools that can be easily obtained and are quite effective as well. And so I think that's definitely something to look to in terms of something to protect against and something to be mindful of. And one other thing, again, related to social engineering, is how kind of fast the sophistication of the tools is developing, and also the kind of efficiency of those tools is developing. Because again, we do know that more than 90% of kind of attacks originate with phishing emails, and how weak we are against these types of attacks most of the time. And when they are supplemented with the use of AI, they can be even more effective. Just to give a couple of really interesting statistics, I think there have been studies that have compared, one more recent one in November 2024 by the Harvard Kennedy School, that have compared sort of phishing emails created fully by humans and phishing emails created by AI, and phishing emails created by AI and humans together. And this last category is a category with the highest click-through rate of 56%. One other important thing to note was that these emails were really sort of quick to create with the aid of AI, and only really required minor human intervention. Again, sort of highlighting really just that cost and quality gain that AI can provide for cyber criminals, especially low-skilled cyber criminals. And so I think looking ahead, it's these components, just how rapidly the technology is evolving and how effective it can be in terms of deepfakes and social engineering and those kind of phishing emails that organizations see likely on a day-to-day basis.
That's interesting. Kind of scary, the fact that they're that effective, especially, AI created phishing emails that only utilize a wee bit of a human interaction to also just further enhance it, were that effective at 56%. So it really just goes to show the importance of, cyber or like social engineering campaigns, and companies, combating or trying to combat that by having, increased focus on cyber awareness, and, maybe campaigns for employees on what phishing emails might look like that utilize AI. I think that's maybe where we're going to need to see a lot of the more cyber hygiene kind of courses focus more on, is the adoption of AI and how that looks compared to just normally crafted phishing emails and other, there's phishing over the phone, there's QR code phishing utilizing, AI to kind of make those a bit more realistic and believable. It's the deep fakes as well, trying to mimic someone's voice or their face and trying to do that that way to basically conduct some sort of malicious operation. I think we're going to see then the need and this the speed as well for these sorts of cyber awareness kind of campaigns and courses to start to implement a lot more quickly. So it is interesting, but yeah, it comes down to it. People are always the primary target. So, being aware of how AI is being utilized to exploit kind of the human side of cybersecurity will always be the key thing to try to ensure resilience. But it is really fascinating that the like deepfakes are becoming so sophisticated that they can mimic, skin tone differences as well, even in a face, that make it look even more realistic. Like, it's no longer just the Photoshop that we had back in the early 2000s. It's now to the point where this is so sophisticated, you might not even be able to tell that someone they're on a video call with is completely different. So it does definitely highlight the risks that businesses, I think, are continuing to face, especially in the realm of cyber operations. Is threat actors are really quick to adopt new technologies. And so companies need to be also quick to adopt mitigations to try to combat it as well as they can. You can only do so much, but it's really, really interesting. I think the way that AI is developed for just in general and its use within just the global market and day-to-day stuff, but also in its utility in cyber operations. So thank you so much for your time and for your insight. It was really, really interesting. Highly recommend anyone who's watched today's podcast to definitely go and find the sub on the AI and cyber operations. It is available off of our LinkedIn as well as for customers. It's also available on the World Risk Register platform as well. Before we conclude, I don't know, Denise, if you have anything additional you'd like to add that we haven't covered yet, any major points or anything that you found that quite interesting that we haven't touched upon yet.
I think if there is anything as a final message to this would be when it comes to AI, I think there's so much conversation around it and kind of sensationalized uses of it. But really, as you've just highlighted again, and as we've spoken about, it really just provides that additional tool for enhancement, automation, and to really just increase the sophistication and scalability of operations. So the kind of threats remain the same. Just be mindful that will make it that much more powerful and effective. And so I think that's definitely something to keep in mind when looking at the use of AI specifically within kind of the cyber threat landscape.
No, that's a really good point. It's a tool that enhances the scalability and the efficiency and efficacy of these operations, but it's not the end all be all. Like, it's not the only tool being utilized. It's just to help facilitate these operations and just also further encouraging a wide scope and kind of awareness of just the entire threat landscape in general for your organization, where the region, the industry, that having that full, comprehensive, holistic perspective of your own risks also include AI led threats, but also include so much more. So that was a fantastic point, I think, to conclude on. So thank you so much for your time. Again, anyone who's interested in reading this, you can find it on our World Risk Register, as well as it is on LinkedIn, available publicly. So please do read it. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you've enjoyed today's content, please like, subscribe, and follow our future podcasts. Thank you so much.